Human Exploration Research Opportunities, sponsored by the Human Research Program. My name is Guillaume Vigneault, and I'm supporting the Human Research Program with this solicitation and its review. For your awareness, this meeting is being recorded, and presentation slides, as well as an FAQ, will be posted alongside the solicitation within the next couple of days, so you can easily refer to it later if you need. Dr. Steve Platts, who is the Human Research Program Chief Scientist, will give you some background about the program and its goals for this solicitation. And then I will give you a brief overview of the new approach we use for reviewing the submitted proposals. And finally, we will open for questions. Note that I have posted in the chat, and I will repost it again, a link to ask your questions. Only questions posted following this link will be answered. Questions posted here in the chat will not be answered. So please make sure to use this link for your questions. So with that, let's see. Do we have Dr. Platts with us? Yes. So Dr. Platts, whenever you're ready, we are hearing for your presentation.
Great, thank you, Guillaume. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pre-Proposers Conference for the 2025 HERO Appendix A. This is an omnibus opportunity, and we'll tell you a little bit more what that means in a few minutes. So next slide, please, Guillaume. So the purpose of this conference is to clarify the solicitation and to answer any questions that the community may have about this particular opportunity. It is open to all, anyone can attend, and it will be recorded. And as Guillaume has said, the results will be posted, and we'll have questions and answers. And if we can't answer a question or we need to have some discussions, the answer to those questions will be posted onto the website at a later time. So everyone will have access to all of this information. So HRP is a applied research program. Our mission is to enable space exploration beyond low Earth orbit by reducing the risks to human health and performance. We do this in a number of different ways. One is to perform the research necessary to identify, characterize, and mitigate the risks to human health and performance. Another is to enable development of medical and human performance standards. These are things like radiation exposure limits, dietary requirements, and things like that, exercise prescriptions. And then finally, we develop and validate technologies. Oops, going too fast, Guillaume. If it's on auto, can you turn that off? And develop technologies that are used to help reduce or otherwise mitigate these risks. These are things like ultrasound on board the space station and things like that. Next slide. We do our research in a stepwise approach. As I'm sure you can all understand, it's incredibly expensive to do research in spaceflight. And so we have a number of different ways to get our research done. The first step is here on Earth. We have a number of different analogs that we use, from NBHAB, where we do bed rest, Antarctic stations, and HERO, where we do isolation, and then the Space Radiation Laboratory at Brookhaven, where we do our radiation simulations. We do a fair amount of research in low Earth orbit aboard the International Space Station. This is really the only place for us to study microgravity, and we take advantage of it whenever we can. For this opportunity, though, no flight studies will be allowed. This is only, the omnibus is only for ground-based studies. And then finally, we do, or we will be doing, lunar missions with the Artemis program, and that will help us eventually get onto Mars and beyond. Next slide. So as I said, we're an applied research program. And that's really important to understand. We're not NIH in space. We're not about, just very basic research. We are very applied. They're risk-based. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But we also fund the Translational Research Institute for Space Health through a cooperative agreement. They have their own solicitation process, so that's a place to look for additional opportunities. And they have a slightly different charter, right? They're more outside the box. They're looking for disruptive technologies and doing things a little bit differently. We also collaborate with other government agencies and other NASA programs. So NIH, NSF, CDC, we work with them quite a bit, the military. And then also within NASA, the Human Research Program works with space biology to help understand more of the cellular and molecular mechanisms. And we work together as a team to get towards this risk mitigation. Next slide. So HRP is split up into a number of different elements to achieve our work. I can't really see who's on, but I'm going to assume there's someone here from each element. So as I step through them, I'll invite the element scientists from that element to give a little description of their element. So the first is human health countermeasures. Is there someone from HHC online?
Good morning, Steve. I'm here. Hello,
Hey,
everybody. My name is Becky Mercado. I'm the acting element scientist for human health countermeasures. We manage the research strategies for a variety of spaceflight risks. We have 3 different portfolios. The first is our cardiovascular and SANS portfolio. We've got our exercise and performance portfolio, which includes exercise, planetary EVA, bone, and sensory motor risks. And then our multi-systems portfolio that is immune, microhost, and food and nutrition. I know I've received several emails asking for relevancy questions, but I'd also refer you to the Human Research Roadmap, and happy to answer any questions. I can put my email in the chat. It's also in the solicitation. Back to you, Steve.
All right, great. Thanks, Becky. The second element is human factors and behavioral performance, and I believe Dr. Whitmire is online. Sandra?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. I'm Alexandra Whitmire, Sandra Whitmire. I'm the Human Factors and Behavioral Performance element scientist, and our element focuses on characterizing and mitigating risk as it relates to individual behavioral health and performance, team behavioral health and performance, sleep and circadian rhythms, human factors and Earth-independent human system operations, and also injury due to dynamic loads. So essentially, we target the psychology and human factors aspects of spaceflight for lunar missions and Mars missions. Research in our area is very applied. We're working to identify ways to provide psychological care and optimal systems design in the context of the hazards of Moon and Mars. And we appreciate the community working with us towards buying down risk. And that's it. Thanks. Back to you, Steve.
All right, thanks, Sandra. The next element is space radiation, and Dr. Zawoski.
Good morning. My name is Janice Zawoski, or a lot of people refer to me as JZ. I'm the space radiation element scientist. The space radiation element, we're mainly focused on characterizing the human health outcomes associated with space radiation exposure, but our ultimate goal is to mitigate the radiation effects by identifying and utilizing countermeasures such as FDA-approved drugs or using surveillance or monitoring to identify cancer early. As we travel beyond Moon and Mars, obviously astronauts will be exposed more to galactic cosmic rays, more than on ISS. And so we have been utilizing the NASA Space Radiation Laboratory at Brookhaven National Lab, where we have a GCR simulator where we do a lot of our research. Our risk at space radiation is cancer, but we also inform the risks of cardiovascular effects with human health countermeasures, as well as central nervous system effects, which is human factors and behavioral performance. Thank you all for being here, and I'll stay on for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, JC. The next element is exploration medical capability, although I don't believe that they will be looking for any solicitations this time around. And finally, research operations and integration, or ROI. I believe Brandon's online. Dr. Vesey?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Brandon Vesey from Research Operations and Integration. We're a little bit different from the other elements that fund research. We're more of a service element for HRP, where we take the research that HRP funds and figure out ways to best implement and integrate those studies into different platforms and environments, whether that's spaceflight or the different ground analogs we work with. For instance, the isolation facility HERA on site at JSC, the NVHAB facility that DLR runs in Cologne, Germany, or the NSF Antarctic stations are a few examples. But in general, we're here to support the research that the other elements are funding.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Next slide, please. As I said, we have a number of different venues for doing our research. The International Space Station, although again, the Omnibus Awards are not eligible for a spaceflight research because there's no way they can be completed in the time required. Likewise, NVHAB, it's very difficult to do a bed rest study like that in the time allotted and with the dollar amount allotted. And SRL is at Brookhaven National Labs, where galactic cosmic radiation experiments are done. We do support parabolic flights and isolation studies here at JSC in the HERA facility, which is a shorter duration isolation facility. And then we also have research ongoing into Antarctica. Next slide. So when I talk about risks, this is what I'm talking about. I know it's an eye chart and it's a bit hard to follow, but let me walk you through it a little bit. So on the far left-hand side are the primary risks that have been identified by the Human System Risk Board. And they're listed and organized by the hazard that applies most directly to them. As we move to the columns on the right, these are the different design reference missions, or DRMs. And these are set up so that going from left to right, we have the shorter missions on the left, the longer duration missions on the right, and then also distance from Earth is a factor here as well. So you can see the first colorful column there with green and yellow that says low Earth orbit. That's what we're doing now. So that's International Space Station. The colors represent the level of risk. And so green is the lowest level of risk, and then yellow is a moderate risk, and red is the highest level of risk. So you can understand where a lot of our resources go towards red risks. And we don't see too many, or we don't see any in low Earth orbit, and that's as it should be. As we move to the right and get further away from Earth and longer durations, all the way to the right is the Mars planetary missions. You can see red and yellow there, and a lot of our resources are devoted to that. But in the middle, you'll see some of the lunar missions. These are similar to the Artemis missions that we're currently planning. And you can see that there are some red ones there as well. So again, we mostly work towards these risks. But as you're writing an Omnibus Award, if it addresses any of these risks listed on the left, they will be considered. Next slide, please. So we have pretty significant constraints on schedule, crew access, and things like that. We only have access to the USOS segment of the crew members, so only astronauts. We do not have access to the Russian crew. And so that limits the resources that we have. Also, remember that all human research is completely voluntary. And so the crew members have to sign up to participate in the research. This also has a tendency to limit the access, which you can understand. So we are quite different from NIH and NSF in the way that we do business. So for these reasons, your investigation should significantly contribute to the risk reduction focus of HRP. For an Omnibus Award, you must directly address a risk that was listed earlier in this presentation. There are a few exceptions, and I'll go over those in more detail in a minute or two. Next slide, please. So as I said, Appendix A is omnibus only. Omnibus awards are short duration awards designed to last no more than 1 year. They are for ground and analog studies only. There are no flight experiments allowed. The budget is up to $250,000, and as I said, for 1 year only. Now, there are 2 exceptions to this and also to the requirement for the risk focus. The first is called the New Investigator Award, and this is for anyone who has not received funding from us or Trish in the last 10 years. The second is the Early Career Investigator Award, and this is similar to the New Investigator Award in that you must not have received funding from us in the past 10 years. But additionally, you must have completed your terminal degree in the last 10 years. And what these 2 exceptions allow is for you to not necessarily be risk focused, but just space flight relevant. Additionally, if you were awarded a New Investigator or Early Career Award, you could receive a second year of funding at an additional $250,000 if you make significant progress. Next slide. So because of all of these things, we require a very robust statistical design. We expect you to do a power analysis, to do real statistical analyses. We know it's very difficult with a small N study to achieve sample size and statistical power, so your statistical package must be very rigorous. Now, we don't require a lot of it in the step 1 proposal, but if you should get to step 2, we expect to see a full statistical section. And if you do not have a rigorous statistical section, we expect you to have a very good rationale for why you do not. Next slide. Another expectation is that you will use sex as a biological variable, and it will be factored into your research design and your research study. This includes all vertebrate animals as well as humans. And so we want you to achieve an equal ratio of male to female participants, whether this is rodents or humans. The exception here is for if you're doing an in-flight study and we don't have access to an equal number, but as I said, omnibus awards are not eligible for flight. And so for ground-based studies, we do expect an even distribution of the sexes. Next slide. Dual anonymous peer review is a relatively new concept for us, but we've been using it for a few years, and it's very important to the way that we're doing our research. Guillaume is going to go through this in more detail, so I will only give a brief mention, but dual anonymous peer review is the way that we can avoid inherent bias in the selection of our research. We want the focus to be on the science and not the team or the prior work or the location of the project. We strictly adhere to the DAPR philosophy, so when you're writing your proposals, you absolutely must read the instructions, because if you make a mistake, your proposal will be rejected and there won't be additional consideration because you didn't know or if you hadn't read the instructions. Please read the instructions. Don't just resubmit an old proposal that you have in the lab from a few years ago, because again, if it did not use DAPR requirements, we will reject it. A couple pitfalls to avoid: do not include references by author name, only use square brackets with numbers. Again, this is all laid out in the solicitation. Do not claim ownership over the work performed by saying things like my previous work or our previous work or our prior analyses. Also, do not include any information that may reveal or be interpreted as your location. For example, you wouldn't want to say subjects will be selected by the NASA test subject facility, or analyses will be performed at Johns Hopkins University. You do not want to say that. That will disqualify you. Also, do not identify yourself as a new investigator or early career in the body of the proposal. There will be a checkbox that you can use in another part of the document. So please, please, please read the solicitation, and follow all the rules for dual anonymous peer review. As I said, we strictly adhere to these requirements. Next slide. Some key dates to keep in mind. Step 1 proposals will be due December 2nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Step 2 proposals will be due March 11th, 2025, again, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we expect to announce no earlier than August 1st, 2025. Next slide. And then I believe this is where I'll pass it over to Guillaume and talk a little bit more about dual anonymous peer review. Guillaume?
Thank you, Dr. Platz. So as Dr. Platz mentioned, I will be talking to you about the dual anonymous peer review and give you some additional details to what Dr. Platz just mentioned. I would say first that as it has been mentioned, there have been some drastic changes in proposal writing and submission over the last couple of years. And this includes dual anonymous peer review, which I will now call DAPR. So with DAPR, reviewers will not see any information that would identify proposers during the first part of the review process. So proposers must follow the instruction provided in the solicitation in the 2025 NOFO document posted alongside the solicitation, and also in the DAPR guidance also posted alongside the solicitation. So with all those 3 documents, you should have every instruction to make your proposal DAPR compliant. So this omnibus solicitation is a 2-step process for review and submission. So most of the following information will apply to step 2 proposals, but it's a good way to wet your feet a little bit into the process before writing your step 2 proposals. So why NASA and HRP are using DAPR? A key goal of peer review is to level the playing field for everyone. So we are aware that it's difficult to completely interrupt biases through training alone. It requires structural changes. So dual anonymous peer review aims to create a change in the tenor of discussion away from the individuals on the proposing team and toward the proposed science. DAPR is not completely a blind process. Proposers submit first an anonymized proposal and second a not anonymized document, which is called the expertise and resource. The merit of the proposal assessed anonymously will be determined separately from the not anonymized qualifications of the team. Nevertheless, the qualifications, track record, and access to unique facilities will form part of the evaluation. So to submit the anonymized proposals, as it has been mentioned, please exclude names and affiliations of the proposing team, including in figures and references to personal websites. Use numeric references only, so numbers in square bracket. Don't use name et al., for example. Do not claim ownership of past work by using, for example, my previously funding work or our analysis shown in Baker et al., blah, blah. Cite references in the passive third person. So, for example, prior analysis indicates that. Please do describe the work proposed. So an example would be, we propose to do the following, or we will measure the effects of. Also include a separate non-anonymized expertise and resources document. So how to reference unpublished works or proprietary results. So it may be occasionally important to cite exclusive access datasets, non-public softwares, unpublished data, or findings that are yet to be presented in public before, but are not citable. each of these may reveal or strongly imply the investigators of the proposal. In these instances, proposers must use language such as obtained in private communication or from private communication when referring to such potentially identifying work. Please recall that the goal of DAPR is to shift the tenor of the discussion, not to make it absolutely impossible to guess team members. So during the review, the panel review, there will be two parts for discussion. The first one is the science review. Each proposal PDF will be assessed based upon significance, mitigation of risk to crew health, approach, and statistical plan. Second part will be the expertise and resources review. So after the science review, using the separate non-anonymized PDF, proposals will be assessed as qualified or unqualified. And the expertise and resources review phase may not be used by the panel to reevaluate proposals or to change the assigned adjectival grade. So HRP is perfectly aware that it may not be flawless. We are observing and analyzing the other programs as they adopt and adapt to the DAPR approach for peer review. Formal support in Inspires is implemented but still new. DAPR represents a major shift in the evaluation of proposal, and as such, there may be occasional slips in writing anonymous proposal. However, as Dr. Platz mentioned, NASA reserves the right to return without review proposals that are particularly egregious in terms of the identification of the proposing team. And NASA further acknowledges that some proposed work may be so specialized that despite attempts to anonymize the proposal, the identities of the PI and team members are readily discernible. As long as the guidelines are followed, NASA will not return this proposal without review. So please make sure to follow strictly the instruction given. And overall, DAPR has promised in increasing the focus of the science during reviews and reduce biasing. So that's why we are using it. So with that, we have some questions posted through the link I've put it in the chat. So if you have additional questions, please post them using this link, and we will start answering those questions. So first question is section 4, research approach. List several areas of interest to the HRP. Can areas, topics outside of these be of interest and within scope for this funding cycle? So who wants to answer this one?
Can you read that one more time, Guillaume?
Yes. Section 4, research approach. List several areas of interest to the HRP. Can areas or topics outside of these be of interest and within scope for this funding cycle?
So if I understand the question correctly, if for an omnibus award, you must address one of the 20 plus risks that I listed, and it's available in the solicitation, the link to find those risks. The only two exceptions are if you're a new investigator or early career, then your proposal must just be spaceflight relevant. It does not directly have to address one of those risks, and those are the only exceptions.
And I've reposted the link to the questions in the chat, so you can also read them if you want.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I'll let you read the second question if you want. Within the scope of this RFP, what are the opportunities and limitations of international collaboration?
International cooperation is always encouraged. However, we cannot fund the international partners. And so you would have to have a letter of support. If you have an international co-investigator, you would have to have a letter of support from your home country's space agency saying that if the proposal is funded, that they would cover the costs of the international participants. We cannot fund an investigation if the primary or if the PI is an international researcher.
So
And
the next
Guillaume,
one, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Where would be the slide be shared? So as I said, the recording of this meeting, presentation slides, and an FAQ will be posted in Nspires alongside the solicitation within the next couple of days. So you will be able to find all this information alongside this, the solicitation shortly. Can a PI submit more than one step one proposals?
Absolutely. There was one cycle where I submitted 12 when I was an investigator. So, yep.
Are plants considered in this program? If not, can you please share which NASA program would be interested in proposal related to plant growth?
If the plants are part of a proposal that address one of the food system risks or something like that, then they would be considered. If the purpose is just to study plants, then that is not HRP. That would most likely be applicable to the space biology program. And they have their own solicitation process that's separate from ours, and it's called ROSES.
And you will be able to find all the NASA solicitations, including a space biology program solicitation in Nspires as well.
Yep.
Is there a dedicated budget here marked for the new investigator and early career investigators categories?
No, there isn't. There's not a predetermined budget for that.
Appendix A states, proposals that use ground analogs and parabolic or suborbital flights or NASA Space Radiation Laboratory are allowed if the study can be accomplished in the omnibus performance period. The overview of this opportunity in this presentation said only ground solutions were included. Will you please confirm that suborbital spaceflight opportunities are included and a viable platform?
If they can be completed within 1 year and for under $250,000, then they would be considered. For us, a suborbital is a ground-based analog.
Will animal studies aimed at better understanding risks of space radiation potentially be funded?
As long as they address specifically a risk or otherwise are spaceflight related, if it's new investigator or early career, we would consider, we do fund animal studies.
Can you clarify mention that exploration medical capability is not looking for proposals? This was not declared in solicitation.
No, it wasn't. We have recently done a reorganization, and it's unlike, I mean, if someone has something that's related and you want to submit it, you can, but the odds of being selected for that are very low as we reevaluate the risks that used to be within EXMC. And this happened after the initial work was done for the solicitation, so it wasn't in time to make any changes, so we decided not to make those changes.
Are the funding scopes of TRISH and HRP mutually exclusive? So for example, if a proposal is deemed appropriate for TRISH, is it not going to be a fit for HRP?
That's not necessarily true. It could be. TRISH doesn't have the same requirements for risk that we do. But I could very easily see many proposals that would fit either or. For us, as long as you are addressing a specific risk, and it's an omnibus, then it would fit for HRP.
Are there restrictions on paying collaborators?
Yes, there are. I do not know what those are, so we would have to answer this question afterwards and post it to the website.
When we will be notified of our invitation to submit for step 2?
I talked over the schedule earlier for when things were due. I don't know off the top of my head what the date would be when people are notified for step 2, but we can pull that out and post it to the website.
Can postdoc apply for this omnibus?
Absolutely. We do not have restrictions on who can apply for us. So we take proposals from postdocs as well as students. We have some graduate students who are funded investigators. We're not like NIH in that regard. So the answer is yes.
In the step 1 proposal, what is the difference between the project summary in the cover page and the proposal document? So I can take this one. So basically, the project summary will be a summary, so a very short description of your project, which goes in the cover page. And the proposal document itself will be a full 1 page where you describe your proposal and your idea. Anything to add, Steve?
Nope, that sounds good.
For step 1 submission, could you briefly explain the submission procedures? Is this a 1-page PDF, also need other documents such as budget, biosketch, etc.? Do I must engage with my ORP office for this submission? So for step 1 submission, so again, this is a 1-page document only. So you do not have to provide any budget, biosketch, or anything like that. And again, the step 1 submission, this 1-page document should be fully anonymized. So make sure it's DARPA compliant, strictly DARPA compliant. And to submit your proposal, you will have to be affiliated to your organization, which will have to be registered in SAMS.gov. Is risk of reduced crew health and performance due to hypoxia open for applications?
As I've said, if it's a risk that's listed in that table, it is open for application.
What is the main difference between ECI and new investigator? Can a person be both? If yes, which to choose?
So an early career is basically just a new investigator who is early in their career. So yes, you can be both. If you are both, you are by definition early career. And so that is the proper one to choose.
Would proposals that explore space radiation risk by combining radiation with other spaceflight stressors be acceptable for consideration?
I'm only going to keep saying that if it addresses one of our risks, then it's eligible. I'm not going to go into details because that's not fair.
As a new investigator without access to human cohorts, should I focus on showing scientific rigor, or do I need to find human participants from NASA, like in NIH or NSF proposals?
You should always show scientific rigor. That's never a question. You do not need to use human participants, and they definitely wouldn't need to be from NASA. There are lots of investigators at universities who find cohorts and do studies in their laboratory.
And the last question, if you want to look at it, Steve, it's about call SM204, and there's a link to the Human Research Roadmap. And the question is the call SM204 titled Develop and Test Post-Planetary Landing Self-Administrated Testing and Rehab Tool still open for proposals? It appears to be actively funded in one of the projects under mappings.
I have no idea what this is, so I can't really answer it.
Yeah, there's a link to the HRR, so I think it's just, it's not, I mean, this page is not for open solicitations. So I think there's a misinterpretation about this one.
Yeah, I think so.
SM204 is not a call for proposals. Oh, and we have one more. Can a team include COI from a different institute?
Absolutely. We encourage broad collaboration like that, so absolutely.
And I think we covered them all so far. We still have 15 minutes, so maybe we can give people a few more minutes for additional questions, if any. Would proposals from ECI be considered for exploration medical capability?
I'm not quite sure what an ECI is.
Sorry, early career investigator. So would proposal from early career investigator be considered for exploration medical capability?
That addresses a specific risk that's listed in our table, it would be considered.
So we'll wait 3 more minutes until 10:50 Eastern Time for additional questions. In step 1, is there a place to put references? So references are not mandatory for step 1, but if you want to add some, feel free to do so at the bottom of the page.
If you are going to put down references, though, make sure you use the DAPR approved way of referencing. If you put a name in there, it will be disqualified.
Does a Trish Fellowship, not a research award, preclude an investigator from being considered a new investigator?
That's a good question. Let us check into that and we'll post that on the website afterward.
Can small businesses apply for this opportunity?
I believe so. You just have to make sure you have the appropriate number to plug into the application. And so you should work through the normal processes for that, but we have no restrictions on small business or any other industry.
Are there places to see previously awarded project and or example of successful applications? So yes, there is a place which is called Taskbook. You can find it online, and we will post a link to the Taskbook webpage in the FAQ, which will be posted alongside the solicitation. And Taskbook has a record of all previously NASA-funded projects. Where will be the recording of the call be available? Recording of the call. If it's recording of this meeting, it will be posted alongside the solicitation within the next couple of days. as a new investigator, can I have a previously funded NASA investigator as a collaborator? Would this jeopardize the new investigator status?
You can have a previous award as a collaborator. It's only if you are listed as the principal investigator that you would then be disqualified. So yes, a new investigator can have previous funding as a collaborator.
Can you please clarify again whether we submit the expertise and roles as an attachment for step 1 or we do that for step 2? So again, step 1s are only the cover page, program-specific data questions, which goes in the cover page, the summary, which is also part of the cover page, and a one-page document where you will explain your idea and proposal. For step 1, you do not need to include any additional documents such as budget, expertise, roles. So you can find all the instructions and how to submit step 1 and step 2s in the solicitations. Everything is described, how to write them and what sections should be included or not. So we already answered this one. Other places to see previously awarded projects. So again, taskbook is the answer to this one. Is most of the omnibus proposal single PI or small team?
It's whatever you want it to be. We have the full gamut. We have single PIs and we have relatively large teams. So there are no restrictions.
If we are to submit expertise role in step 1, can we have additional members added to step 2s? We are waiting on approval. So again, look at the solicitations, what should be included for your step 1s. But team members are not binded to step 1. So list whoever is known at time of step 1 submissions. And if you are invited to submit a step 2, you will be allowed to add any additional team members as needed. Can we have a NASA person as a co-investigator?
Yes.
And same question, I mean, pretty much the same. Can we have collaborators within NASA?
Yep.
So we still have 7 minutes to reach the top of the hour. So we'll use those 7 minutes for any additional questions. Our resubmission is an improvement of a rejected step 2 and addresses feedback from reviewers. I assume it's not advisable to refer to the prior submission, to us that would be a violation of DAPR. Is that correct?
I would say that's correct.
Yeah, this is correct. Please do not refer to prior submissions in your proposal. You will have one of the program-specific data question is whether or not your proposal, your current proposal is a resubmission or not. This is for internal use, specifically for conflict of interest checks. But in your proposal, please do not refer to your prior submission. If we have a NASA COI or a civil servant collaborator, do we need to include both roles in the budget?
For step 2, yes. For step 1, we don't need a budget.
How often is the solicitation released? Is it annual?
Typically, we have 2 solicitations a year. Sometimes we have more if there are particular topics we want to solicit for, and occasionally if we have budgetary restrictions, we will have fewer, but our intention is to have 2 solicitations per year.
Sorry, I was muted. For step 2, where do we get the costs for civil servant and contractors' rates to add to the budget?
You'll have to work that out with whoever the contractor is and with the civil servant to find out what those dollars are. We can't tell you what that is.
And we have 3 more minutes for remaining questions. If the PI is a new investigator and COI is from NASA, are they considered for a new investigator award?
Yes, we only use the PI position to determine whether it's new investigator or not. So if the PI is a new investigator, then it would qualify.
What is the success rate?
It varies dramatically. It's hard to say. And it would vary depending on the quality of the submissions that we have here. So it's not predictive.
Can we recruit test subjects from the NASA Astronaut Corps, not flight assigned, for ground studies?
While it's theoretically possible, it would be highly unlikely that you could recruit astronauts who are not assigned to participate in a study for a 1-year study. I would not encourage it.
Okay, so we have reached the top of the hour. So again, the recording of this meeting, as well as presentation slides and an FAQ, will be posted alongside the solicitation within the next couple of days. So have a wonderful rest of your week, and we look forward to your proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.